There was a time I begged him to stay. I remember the coldness in his voice as he turned away, leaving me with nothing but silence and shattered dignity. I cried that night until my throat ached and my body trembled, thinking I would never breathe right again without him. I thought love meant holding on even when it hurt. I thought losing him would mean losing myself. But now he watches me from across the room like a stranger who once knew a softer version of me. He does not dare speak. He does not move. He just stares, as if trying to place the woman I have become against the girl he once broke. I do not flinch. I do not turn away. I do not smile or offer the comfort of closure. I simply exist, fully, powerfully, in a way that makes his silence scream louder than any apology ever could. He broke me into pieces, tiny, trembling pieces of who I used to be. But I picked up each one, slowly, quietly, and I rebuilt myself into someone he can never reach again. I never thought strength would feel like this, calm, steady, and completely untouchable. And as I stand here, surrounded by people who see me, really see me, I cannot help but wonder if he ever saw me at all. But to understand how I became this woman, the one he cannot touch, you would have to know who I was before everything fell apart. You would have to go back to the beginning, to the version of me who thought love could fix anything. Even him. Even us. I met him on a rainy evening in October, when the sky hung low and the city lights shimmered against the wet pavement. I remember the sound of his laugh before I even turned around to see his face. There was something magnetic about him. His confidence, the way he held eye contact a little longer than necessary, as if he could see something in me that no one else had noticed. I was 22, naive, and still believed in the kind of love that rewrote people. I thought maybe he would be the chapter that changed my story. He was warm at first, so gentle it almost made me nervous. He remembered the smallest details. How I took my coffee, the name of my childhood dog, the song I played on repeat when I was anxious. He made me feel chosen, wanted, important. He would send good morning texts before I even opened my eyes. He would hold my hand in public and tell people I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. And I believed him. Every word. In the beginning, love looked like fairy lights and long drives, soft kisses and whispered promises. He told me he had never met anyone like me. That I was different. That I made him feel safe. And I felt safe too. Safe enough to share my secrets, my fears, the dark corners of my past. He listened so well. He made me think my vulnerability was a gift, not a risk. I trusted him completely. But slowly, almost too quietly to notice, things began to shift. His words became sharper, laced with small insults wrapped in jokes. He started pointing out my flaws with a smile, laughing off my discomfort as me being too sensitive. He told me I was lucky he was patient, that most men would not put up with someone like me. I laughed too, trying to believe he was teasing, that it was just his way, that maybe love meant learning to take a joke even when it stung. The good morning texts stopped coming. The compliments faded. I started to feel like I was always chasing something I could never quite reach, the version of him who had once adored me. But every time I thought about walking away, he would pull me back in with just enough sweetness to keep me hoping. Soft apology. A sudden bouquet of flowers. A night where he held me like I was still his world. He never raised his voice. That was the most confusing part. He never yelled or pushed or cursed. He just controlled me with silence, with disappointment, with the ever-present fear that if I did not behave the way he wanted, he would disappear again. And I could not bear the thought of losing him, even though, somewhere deep down, I was already losing myself. He made me question my own memory. I would bring up things he said, and he would deny them so convincingly that I started to wonder if I had imagined them. "You are always twisting my words," he would say. "You hear what you want to hear." I began to doubt my own mind. I kept apologizing for things I had not done, crying over fights I did not start, trying to be better, quieter, prettier, less emotional. I stopped wearing certain clothes because he said they made me look desperate for attention. I stopped talking to friends because he called them distractions. I even changed the way I laughed. I tried so hard to become the version of myself he would love again. I remember staring at myself in the mirror one night, unable to recognize the girl looking back at me. Her eyes were tired, her smile was forced, and her light was almost gone. I had traded my voice for his comfort, my dreams for his approval, my identity for his love. And yet I still felt like I was not enough. No matter how much I gave, he always made me feel like I was one mistake away from losing him. He started disappearing for days without explanation. When I asked where he had been, he would sigh and tell me I was being clingy. "You are always overreacting," he said. "I need space. You are suffocating me." And I would nod, swallow my pain, and tell myself to give him what he needed. Because if I did not, maybe he would leave for good. The worst part was that I still loved him. Even through the pain. Even through the lies. I clung to the memory of who he was in the beginning, convinced that if I just held on a little longer, he would come back to me. I blamed myself for everything. His mood swings, his distance, his coldness. I told myself I was too emotional, too intense, too much. Became small for him. I shrank myself so he could feel bigger. He cheated on me once, maybe more. I only found out because I saw a message pop up on his phone while he was in the shower. My hands trembled as I read the words. A girl I had never heard of, thanking him for last night. When I confronted him, he did not even deny it. He just stared at me, expressionless, and said, "You were not giving me what I needed. What did you expect?" And still I stayed. Because by then I had forgotten how to be alone. I had forgotten who I was before him. I thought love meant forgiveness, patience, sacrifice. I thought leaving meant failure. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that all relationships had their dark moments. But what I did not realize then was that I was not in love. I was in survival mode. I was addicted to the hope that he would change. Addicted to the crumbs of affection he threw my way when I was on the edge of walking away. I lived for those moments, tiny fleeting glimpses of the man I met on that rainy October evening. But that man was gone. Maybe he had never really existed at all. By the time I truly understood the depth of the damage, it felt too late. I had given him everything, my trust, my heart, my time. I had nothing left for myself. And even then, even at my lowest, I was still hoping for him to love me the way I had loved him. I could not see it then, but I was already bleeding for someone who would never stop the bleeding. I was pouring into someone who saw me as a convenience, not a person. I was breaking myself, piece by piece, trying to hold together something that had never been whole. And soon, I would reach the point where there was nothing left to break. It happened on a Thursday night. One of those quiet, unremarkable evenings that should have faded into the background of memory. But that night everything broke. That night became the line between who I was and who I would never be again. He had told me he was working late. I remember the way he brushed past me on his way out, barely meeting my eyes. His cologne lingered longer than his presence. I waited up for him like I always did, staring at the cold dinner I had made, untouched on the table. Midnight came and went. I called him twice, then 3 times. No answer. I told myself he was busy, that he would walk through the door and kiss my forehead like nothing had happened. That was the lie I had trained myself to believe. But then my phone buzzed. A message from a friend I had not spoken to in months. No words, just a photo. Blurry but clear enough. Him, sitting in a booth at a bar, a woman curled up next to him, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting on her thigh. He looked relaxed, happy, like he was exactly where he wanted to be. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I felt the room tilt, like the walls were collapsing around me. I waited until dawn, frozen in place, hoping it was a misunderstanding, hoping he would walk in with some excuse, some explanation that would make it all go away. But when the key finally turned in the lock and he stepped inside, he did not even look surprised to see me awake. He did not lie. He did not apologize. He just looked at me and said, "What do you want me to say?" That was it. No remorse. No guilt. Just indifference. I broke right there in front of him. My knees hit the floor before I could stop them. Tears spilled down my face like they had been waiting for permission. I sobbed, begged, pleaded, words pouring out of me without control. I asked him why. I asked if he ever loved me. I asked if I had done something wrong. He just stared, cold, silent. I cannot do this anymore, he said finally, his voice flat. You are too much. You always have been. And then he left, just like that. Walked out the door while I sat on the floor in pieces, shattered beyond recognition. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was deafening. The house felt like a coffin. Every room held a memory I did not want to remember. His jacket on the chair. His toothbrush in the bathroom. His scent on my pillow. I wandered through the space like a ghost, unsure whether I was mourning a relationship or myself. I stopped answering calls. I stopped eating. I could not sleep without waking up from dreams where he was still mine. I hated those dreams. I hated the way they made me hope. Every morning became a reminder that he was gone and that I was still here, barely functioning. My friends tried in the beginning. They came with soft voices and gentle hands, offering comfort I could not feel. They told me I deserved better. They told me he was not worth it. But then the tone began to shift. The visits became shorter. The messages became fewer. I heard things like, "You need to move on," and "You are letting him win," as if healing was a switch I could flip. As if I had not already tried. As if I had not screamed into my pillow until my voice cracked. Even my family began to pull away. They looked at me with tired eyes, unsure of how to help. My mother said, "You have to let it go," but she did not know what it felt like to lose yourself entirely. She did not know that I was not just grieving him. I was grieving the girl who had once believed she was worthy of love. I stopped going outside. The world felt too bright too fast. I could not bear the thought of running into someone who would ask me where he was. I deleted all my social media. I did not want to see him moving on. I did not want to see him smiling without me. I did not want to see the life I thought we would have unfolding with someone else. Nights were the worst. That was when the silence screamed the loudest. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how love could turn into something that hurt this much. I would replay every moment, every word, every red flag I had ignored. I blamed myself for everything. I told myself I was not pretty enough, not calm enough, not lovable enough. I believed I had driven him away with my emotions, my insecurities, my need to be seen. I convinced myself that no one else would ever want me. That I had been lucky to have even tasted love, even if it destroyed me. I thought I would never recover. That I would carry this pain forever, like a scar too deep to hide. There were moments when the darkness pulled me in so tightly, I could barely breathe. I would sit on the bathroom floor for hours, shaking, wondering how much more I could take. I thought about disappearing. Not in the dramatic sense, but quietly. Leaving town, changing my name, vanishing into a life where no one knew my story. I wanted to erase everything. Myself. The entire past. But I could not run. Had no strength. I barely had the will to keep going. I was existing in pieces. Shattered fragments of a girl who used to laugh without fear. A girl who used to dream. The people around me stopped asking how I was. They stopped waiting for answers. I could see the disappointment in their eyes. They wanted me to snap out of it, to be okay, to put on a brave face. But I was not brave. I was broken. And no one could see how deep the cracks ran. I used to think love was the most powerful thing in the world. That it could heal, transform, protect. But now I knew love could also ruin you. Could twist you into someone you did not recognize. It could turn you into a shadow of who you were meant to be. I looked in the mirror one night, and for the first time I said the words out loud. He does not love me. He never did. My voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like a scream in the silence. I cried until my body gave out. I fell asleep on the floor, exhausted from my own grief. I did not know it then, but that moment, my lowest, my most vulnerable, was not the end. It was the beginning of something I could not yet see. But at the time all I knew was the pain. All I could feel was the emptiness he left behind. And I truly believed that without him I was nothing. Just a shell. Memory. A woman left behind. And in that darkness I stayed. For a while. Until something deep inside me, something I thought was long gone, whispered that maybe, just maybe, I was not finished yet. The first step did not feel like a step at all. Felt like a breath. A long, aching breath that tasted like surrender. I did not wake up one morning suddenly ready to heal. It was slower than that. Quieter. Like something inside me simply refused to stay in the dark any longer. I was still broken, still aching, but I was tired of letting the pain define every corner of my life. I needed a way out, even if I did not know what that looked like. Therapy came as a whisper, not a decision. A colleague, someone I barely knew, left a note on my desk at work. It said, "You do not have to go through this alone," with a number written beneath it. I stared at that paper for days. I kept it folded in my wallet, telling myself I would call eventually. When I finally did, my voice trembled. I almost hung up twice before the receptionist answered. I walked into the therapist's office carrying months of silence. I sat on the couch, arms crossed, heart guarded, and for the first 10 minutes I said nothing. I stared at the floor while she waited. No pressure. No judgment. Just space. Then the words started coming. Not all at once, but piece by piece. My voice cracked. My hands shook. But I told her everything. The late nights, the manipulation, the betrayal, the way I had become someone I could not even name anymore. And when I finished, she said something so simple that it nearly undid me. "That should never have happened to you." I cried harder than I ever had before. Because someone finally saw the wound for what it was. Not weakness. Not overreaction. Not failure. A wound. Real. And worthy of healing. The sessions continued. Some days I felt strong, like maybe I was finally stepping into the light. Other days I walked out feeling raw, exposed, like I had peeled back every layer of my skin just to look at how badly I had bled. But it was a process, and for the first time I committed to something that was only for me. I started journaling. Felt strange at first, writing to no one. But eventually it became my mirror. I wrote letters I never sent. To him. To myself. To the girl I used to be. I wrote apologies and confessions, dreams and doubts. And slowly, the page became a place of safety, a place where I could hear myself again. Isolation began to shift into reflection. I stopped seeing solitude as punishment. I began to see it as space. Space to breathe. Space to grow. I took long walks with no destination. I sat in cafes with a book, not to distract myself but to be with myself. I realized how uncomfortable I had always been in my own presence. I had filled my life with noise to avoid facing the silence inside me. But now, in that silence, I began to hear something beautiful. My own voice. I started setting boundaries, quiet ones at first. I stopped responding to his messages, those occasional empty texts that served no purpose but to remind me that he could still reach me. I blocked his number, deleted our pictures, removed him from every space where he had once been present. Hurt. I cried every time I took another step away from him. But it also gave me air. I distanced myself from people who had only stayed to watch me fall. The ones who loved drama more than healing. The ones who said things like, "You should be over this by now." I learned to say no. I learned to choose myself, even when it made others uncomfortable. It was not a straight path. Healing never is. There were days I slipped back into the sadness like a warm blanket. Days I missed him so deeply it scared me. Days when I questioned everything, my worth, my strength, my future. There were nights I stared at my phone, tempted to reach out, just to hear his voice. I hated that I still longed for someone who had broken me. I hated that I could still feel love for someone who never protected mine. But I forgave myself for that too. My therapist told me healing does not mean forgetting. It means understanding. And the more I understood, the more I saw the truth. I had loved deeply, and there was no shame in that. The shame belonged to him, not to me. I started doing things I used to love. Painting. Cooking. Sitting by the window with tea and music. I went back to the old bookstore where we first met, not to relive the past but to reclaim it. I smiled at strangers. I made new friends, quiet, kind ones who did not expect me to perform my healing, who simply sat beside me and let me be. Self-love did not come in a rush. Came in moments. Small, almost invisible victories. Choosing to eat well. Getting out of bed on a bad day. Saying something kind to my reflection. These moments stacked themselves, slowly forming a foundation stronger than anything I had ever known. I began to see myself not as damaged, but as resilient. Not as someone who had failed, but as someone who had survived. I realized I had been rebuilding all along, quietly, gently, in the background of my own grief. The scars were still there. They would always be there. But they no longer made me weak. They made me real. And slowly, I began to feel something I had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Not for someone else to come and save me, but for the life I was beginning to save for myself. The transformation did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, each step forward building upon the last, leading me toward a version of myself I had never imagined possible. The woman who once felt invisible in her own life was becoming someone unrecognizable, strong, independent, and thriving in ways that once seemed unattainable. I immersed myself in my career, channeling my energy into work that both challenged and fulfilled me. I sought out projects that ignited my passion, and in doing so, I began to see my own potential more clearly. The office, once just a place to pass the hours, became a space where I could redefine my professional identity. My dedication did not go unnoticed. Promotions and accolades followed, but more importantly, I started to believe in my own capabilities. Alongside professional growth, I explored personal reinvention. I experimented with my style, choosing clothing that reflected the confidence I was cultivating within. Each outfit became an expression of my evolving self, a testament to the autonomy I was reclaiming. I learned to enjoy my own company, finding solace in solitude rather than fearing it. Quiet evenings with a book, solo walks in the park, or simply sitting with my thoughts became cherished moments of self-connection. Eager to expand my horizons, I pursued new skills that had always intrigued me. I enrolled in cooking classes, discovering the joy of creating meals that nourished both body and soul. I took up painting, allowing colors and brushstrokes to convey emotions I could not yet put into words. These endeavors were not just hobbies, they were acts of self-discovery, each one revealing facets of myself that had been long suppressed. Travel became another avenue of growth. I ventured to cities I had only dreamed of visiting, immersing myself in diverse cultures and experiences. Each journey was a step further away from the confines of my past, and a step closer to the boundless possibilities of my future. Navigating unfamiliar streets and engaging with new people taught me resilience and adaptability, reinforcing the belief that I was capable of crafting a life on my own terms. The idea of starting something of my own began to take root. Inspired by my journey, I launched a blog to share my experiences anonymously. Writing became a cathartic outlet, and to my surprise, my words resonated with others who had faced similar struggles. The blog evolved into a platform for empowerment, fostering a community where stories of survival and triumph could be shared without judgment. Helping others find their strength became a source of profound fulfillment. As I continued to grow, new people entered my life. Colleagues, fellow hobbyists, travelers. Each connection brought fresh perspectives and mutual respect. Some admired the transformation they witnessed, drawn to the confidence I now exuded. While I welcomed these new relationships, I approached them with a newfound wisdom. The past had taught me the importance of boundaries and self-respect, and I was determined to honor both. There were moments of doubt, times when the shadows of my former life threatened to re-emerge. But each challenge was met with the resilience I had cultivated. I reminded myself of the journey I had undertaken, the obstacles I had overcome, and the strength that now defined me. The setbacks became less daunting, mere bumps on a road I was determined to travel. Looking back, the woman I once was felt like a distant memory. The transformation was not just external but deeply internal. I had become unrecognizable, not just to those who had known me before, but to myself. The timid, uncertain person who once sought validation from others had blossomed into someone who found strength within. My evolution was a testament to the power of self-love, perseverance, and the unwavering belief that a brighter future was possible. In embracing my journey, I discovered that the most profound changes often come from within. By reclaiming my identity, pursuing my passions, and opening myself to new experiences, I had not only rebuilt my life but had created one richer and more fulfilling than I had ever imagined. The past no longer defined me. Instead, it served as a foundation upon which I built a future brimming with promise and self-assurance. The evening air was crisp as I stepped into the art gallery, the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses filling the space. The walls were adorned with vibrant canvases, each telling its own story. I moved through the crowd with ease, my confidence radiating as I engaged with fellow art enthusiasts. The years of self-discovery and growth had sculpted me into a woman who no longer sought validation from others. I was content in my solitude, finding strength in my independence. As I admired a particularly striking piece, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change that sent a ripple through my calm demeanor. Turning slightly, my eyes met a familiar figure across the room. It was him, the man who had once shattered my world. He stood near the entrance, his gaze fixed intently on me, a mixture of surprise and something else, perhaps regret, etched across his features. Our eyes locked for a brief moment before I turned back to the painting, refusing to let his presence unsettle me. I had anticipated this day might come, but I had not expected it to be here, amidst the serenity of art and cultured conversation. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, I reminded myself of the journey that had brought me to this point. I was no longer the woman he had left behind. Minutes passed, and I sensed him approaching. His footsteps were hesitant, lacking the confidence he once exuded. I continued to study the artwork before me, feigning obliviousness to his advance. Finally he stood beside me, the proximity close enough to feel the warmth of his presence, yet I remained composed. "Hello," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. I turned my head slightly, offering a polite but distant smile. "Hello." He seemed taken aback by my calm demeanor, perhaps expecting a more emotional reaction. "I did not expect to see you here," he admitted, his eyes searching mine for any sign of the woman he once knew. I nodded subtly, returning my gaze to the painting. "Art has always been a passion of mine." He shifted uncomfortably, clearly grappling with the change in our dynamic. "You look different, radiant." "Thank you," I replied evenly, refusing to let his words penetrate the armor I had built. Silence settled between us, the weight of unspoken history hanging in the air. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "I have thought about you often. About us. I owe you an apology for everything." I turned to face him fully, my expression serene yet unreadable. "An apology is not necessary. The past is behind us." He frowned slightly, as if struggling to reconcile my detachment with his memories of me. I was a fool. I did not realize what I had until I lost it. I held his gaze, unwavering. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we learn from them." He took a step closer, his voice lowering. "Is there any chance we could start over? I have changed." A soft, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. "I am glad to hear that you have grown. But I have moved on. My life is full and fulfilling." He looked down, the rejection settling over him. "I understand." I inclined my head slightly. "I wish you well." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing amidst the crowd. My heart remained steady, unburdened by the encounter. I had reclaimed my power, my sense of self, and no one could take that from me. The past no longer held sway over my present or my future. I was free. I often think about the woman I used to be, the one who was lost in the chaos of a love that never truly existed. She was fragile, uncertain, always searching for something outside herself to make her feel whole. She gave everything, sacrificed pieces of herself, all in the name of love. I used to believe that losing myself was a price worth paying for someone else's affection. But now I understand just how wrong I was. The truth is, I never had to lose anything. The person I was meant to be was always within me, buried under layers of doubt and fear. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. The journey from the girl I once was to the woman I am now is one of resilience, strength, and transformation. I have learned to trust my own voice again, to believe in my worth. There are scars, yes, but they are no longer sources of shame. They are symbols of survival. Each mark on my soul tells a story of perseverance, of moments when I thought I could not go on but somehow did. I think about the day I walked away. I remember the fear that gripped me, the uncertainty that clouded my vision. But in that fear, I found the first real glimpse of freedom. Leaving was never about him, it was about me. It was about choosing myself for the first time. Choosing my peace, my growth, my future. I no longer needed to hold on to something that was never mine to begin with. There is no anger in me anymore. No bitterness. I am not looking for revenge. I do not need to prove anything to him or anyone. The healing that has taken place within me is the greatest form of revenge I could have ever had. It is the silent victory that no one can take away. Revenge would only have kept me tethered to a past that no longer serves me. And I am so much more than that past. I am a woman who has learned to embrace her worth, who has stepped into her power without apology. I am grateful for everything I went through, but not for him. I am grateful because it has brought me to this moment, the woman I have become, the woman I am proud of, the woman who stands tall and strong, who no longer seeks validation from others but instead creates her own worth from within. The woman who knows that peace is her birthright, not something to be earned or given. I have learned to love myself in ways I never thought possible. I have learned that true strength is not in holding on to the past, but in letting go of what no longer serves me. I have learned that true freedom comes from within, from the ability to walk away from anything that tries to dim my light. And I know now that I am worthy of the love, respect, and peace I've fought so hard to create. I am no longer the woman who begged for love. I am the woman who demands it from the universe, on her own terms. And that is all the closure I will ever need.